In the heart of the Middle East lies two nations, Israel and Palestine. Lands that are profound, encompassing almost 4,000 years of history. This is a place where the echoes of millennia-old tale resonate through the narrow alleyways of the Jerusalem's old city. The birthplace of world-changing religions like Judaism and Christianity, or the holy sites for the Muslims. The land in the shadow of the Mediterranean Sea seemed like a place where people from all walks of life found a home. Whether it be defectors from Egypt who came with Moses, or people looking for a new beginning like the Aegeans. However, it became a region where diverse culture, religious, and aspirations converge, creating a complex tapestry of human experience. Here, the narrative of Israel and Palestine are deeply intertwined, yet also deeply divided. Rise and fall of vast empires or conflicts due to the religious and territorial disputes. Multiple wars have been fought and thousands of people have been displaced or killed, and yet the enduring struggle for sovereignty continues. The history of Israel and Palestine. Let's talk about it. So, we are going to be talking about the history of Israel and Palestine, or the region, right? And this has been going on for almost 4,000 years, as we've already prefaced, right? But we have to also preface it by saying that most of the things, or most of the facts and stats that we have come from, especially towards the latter half of the history, right? Like during the first 2,000 years of the history, comes from the Hebrew Bible, which is Hebrew Bible being the religious book of the Jewish people. So that means there might be some biases or some things that are not reported very accurately. So we would like to apologize for that. But of course, let's go from the top then. Let's go all the way back to the 17th century, right? And this is BCE, before the Common Era, right? So in the Hebrew Bible, it is stated that God sent Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? The patriarchs of the Jewish religion, to come and settle in the land of Canaan, right? Which Canaan being the general area where, like right now, in the modern day, it's Israel, full of Israel, West Bank and Gaza Strip, but parts of Syria, Lebanon, and even Jordan, right? So this was the major region of Canaan, right? And then the Hebrew Bible believes God sent the three patriarchs here. And during this period, it was very common to make pilgrimage and all that. And a lot of Jewish people is believed to be settled in Egypt, right? But during the 13th century BCE, there was mass exodus from Egypt, right? A lot of people, especially Jewish people, left Egypt with Moses. And we've known, people must have heard about Moses, the person who parted the seas and brought the Jewish people to their holy land, right? And this was no common feat, right? It took 40 years from the exodus from Egypt to get to the modern day Israel, Palestine. Right, so this was a massive journey, But and during this time, it is also believed. So this is during the 12th, 13th century, right? The mass exodus and all that. It is also believed that the people from Greece, right, were the Aegeans, right? Aegeans. So the Aegeans, they were also settling in the modern area of Israel and Palestine. Right, specifically towards Tel Aviv and Yafa. And these people, they left Greece for a better life. Right, and they were settled in multiple pockets of the modern, like the old day Canaan. Right. From then on, we do not have concrete history of everything that happened, but in 1020 to 1000 BCE, we do not have the exact dates, of course, but it is believed that the Jewish monarchy was well and truly established by King Saul. Right?
King Saul.
Yeah, and he was able, there were multiple tribes in this area.
So was he the son of Solomon?
No. Solomon? So Solomon will come, right? So Solomon is the grandson of King Saul. So what was King Saul able to do? Basically, there were multiple tribes, more than 10, 20 tribes in this area of different factions of Jewish people. And he was basically able to
unite them all
under one flag, right? And this was the kingdom of Israel. So that's why he is established as the first king. And then once King Saul's reign came to an end, and by the way, you guys have to remember that kings and people generally died very early back then, right? So he did not rule for a long time. Within 20 years of his rule, his son David came into power, and David established Jerusalem.
Okay.
Right, as the capital of the Israel state. So that's why Jerusalem even now not only holds the same name, a lot of names throughout the history have been changed, but it still holds such a massive importance in the whole thing, the whole shebang of Jewish and Islamic people. Anyways, moving on from that, then his son, David's son, the grandson of King Solomon, was the first person to build a temple in Jerusalem.
Okay, yeah.
And this was a Jewish temple, right? And this was for the God, the all-encompassing God, but also Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Okay.
Right? So this is most of what happened. And then the other important fact that I think we'll have to mention is that King Saul, he did make the kingdom, but once his reign came to an end, once his grandson's kingdom came to an end, Solomon's, then Israel was divided into two parts, Judah and Israel. Right? And then Judah will constantly play an important part because the Romans tried to also recreate Judah and establish a different kind of, culture there, right? Whether it be Palestinian or other culture, to somewhat disarm the Jewish culture that was very overwhelming.
Basically colonize the entire place?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they ruled and all that. So I'll come to that as well, right? Anyways, from 722 to 720 BCE, then the Assyrians was the empire that was in control of the Canaan area, right? And these were people from Israel, Iraq and all that. And this empire had civilizations in Mesopotamia.
Oh,
right?
So they are in connect with one of the first civilizations of the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these people have history from 14th century BCE to 7th century.
Yeah.
So they did capture Israel for a while, but it was a very short-lived thing. Then again, it went back and forth, all this and all that. But Judah was conquered in 586 BCE by the Babylonians, right? And when the Babylonians first came into Judah, the latter half, we'll put pictures for reference, of course, but they destroyed the temple created by King Solomon.
Okay.
Right? So this was a major period. Anyways, now we skip a little bit further, and then a few decades later, the Persians were the people that now ruled because there was a massive, vacuum left after the fall of the Assyrian Empire, and the Babylonian Empire was
and Persians were at once huge empire.
Yeah. So, and this is also very fun, by the way. It's just a side note that somehow Jerusalem and somehow Israel and Palestine have been in the midst of rules from all these great empires throughout the year. And a great, of course, is relative. For some people, it might be great. For some people, it might not be. But yeah, so they have been in conjunction with the history throughout the years, so their name has been mentioned throughout the history. So that's why we do get a lot of conflicts and all this that have been brewing there, right? But anyways, the Persian were the people that took control of the Canaan area. I'll just refer to it as Canaan so that we don't make any people mad about the whole naming thing, right? But the Persian people allowed people from Jewish people from Babylon who were exiled during that period of Babylonian rule to come back, and then the Jewish people established the temple again. This was the second time, right? A few hundred years later, 332 BCE, Alexander the Great, like I said, right? Multiple different great rules.
The Macedonian.
Yeah. So the Alexander the Great and his army were able to conquer this area from the Persians, right? And then the Hellenistic rules started. The reason they call it Hellenistic is because they were trying to get rid of the culture and then incorporate the Greek culture in there, right? So that's why it's Hellenistic. Anyways, after that, a few hundred years later, there was a revolt in 166 BCE, which the Jewish people finally won, and Judaism, desecration of the temple started to take place. Right, again, because of this revolt and all, the temple was in somewhat of a disarray. But in 129 BCE to 63 BCE, Jewish people independently were under one monarch, that was the Hasmonean monarchy. And this was the monarchy that was somewhat pro-Jewish, right? And then in 63 BCE, again, now a new empire came into the frame, and this was the Roman Empire, and they took control of the area, and this was done by Pompey. And of course, we must have all heard of Pompey, not just the region where the volcano eruption and all that happened, but this was the great Pompey who tried to go against Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
Right. So you see what I mean? Like, this is there's so many things that's just.
So it's like, it's literal when you've said that rise and fall of vast empires.
Yeah.
So it's literally happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that, and then for almost 300 years to 250 years, Romans were the rulers of this region.
So was it Christian dominated at the time when Romans were?
Eventually.
Okay.
The Christianity came into frame, because it took a while. I forget the name of the ruler, but this was the Latin Roman, like the eastern side of Roman, who who made Romans all Catholics.
Oh, there was Constantine,
right? And he established Constantinople.
Yeah.
Right? So all of this will come into frame. But until then, it was just the Romans ruling. Okay. And then that is also one of the reasons why in Jerusalem there is a Christian temple, because Bethlehem was the place where Jesus was supposedly born.
Yeah.
Right? And Bethlehem is just besides Jerusalem.
A hotbed of religious,
Right?
Yes.
Right. Yes. So it's understandable why there's so much like conflict, and everyone's like, there's 3 religions in the mix, and everyone's trying to claim their holy land. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, in the 28th Common Era, so now we have the Roman Empire has changed, right? And then they've refurbished the temple, the temple that was desecrated, right? The temple that was built by King Solomon, right? And destroyed, rebuilt, desecrated, and now they've refurbished the Roman Empire, right? And the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah.
So now this is where the Christianity comes into the mainframe, right? They come into what do we say?
The picture,
right?
Yeah.
And then the Jewish revolts against the Romans, and what do the Romans do? Bam! Destroy the temple again. They refurbished it just a few years ago. But anyways, then again, the second temple is gone, and a few hundred years goes on. So till 313 BC, this is the Common Era, right? So 313 Common Era, Romans were in charge and all that. But in 313 to 636 Common Era, or AD, I don't think it translates exactly AD and Common Era, so we might be a little bit off on the dates. But in the Common Era, the Byzantine Empire came into rule, right? And Byzantine Empire, basically the Roman Empire that was left.
Yeah,
right?
basically, some also refer to it as the Eastern Roman Empire.
Yeah. So, and why the Eastern? Because the Western side of the Roman Empire had completely fallen off, and the East still maintained everything, and then the Constantinople was still the capital from where they ruled, and all of this, right? And then I think the Vatican and everything was established by this empire, right? Okay. So all of this comes into that frame as well. So just a hotbed of interesting things happening all over the years. But that's that. Then in 636 Common Era, or AD, I'll just say AD, the Arabs came into rule again, right? And then the Arabs that came into rule then, this was the Arabic people that were super united, because Prophet Muhammad had lived during that period, right? And just 4 years after Prophet Muhammad had died, and he had claimed that the Palestinian area or the Israel or Canaan was the Holy Land for Muslim people as well. Right? And of course, we know that the birth of Islam was in Mecca, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Right? But they claimed that this land was also holy, and people had to make pilgrimage and do all these different things. However, right? But that 4 years after the Prophet had died, Rashidun, not a very common name we hear nowadays, but conquered the area, and then for the next 4 centuries, there were different caliphates that ruled this.
So it was completely an Arab rule, or an Islamic rule for about 400
centuries. Dang, 400 years, and it was ruled sometimes from Damascus, which now somewhat lost to the history. The names changed. I think it's in modern day Syria, and also sometimes from Egypt. So we can see that there was also conflict going on inside the empire as well, and then they were ruling from different places and all that, right? But by the way, so they ruled for 400 years, but during their reign, they reestablished the Jewish temple.
Okay.
Right, and this was the third and final time.
The fourth or fifth?
Third
time. Okay.
Third time, the final time that it was properly made, and then it was done in the same place as the, what do we call it? The first temple was established, and the Dome of Rock, right? And this was built by the way, we have to mention the name, because even till then, it seems like Muslim religious people did not have that much of a harsh take on the Jewish people that were living there, So Abd el-Malik, right? This was the caliph that established the temple for the third time.
Yeah.
Right? And then now we come into the Crusade domination. This was the Latin kingdom of Jerusalem, and then the Crusaders came in from 1099 AD to 1291 AD. And then from then we go to the Mamluk Sultanate. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name. Right, it definitely doesn't sound very threatening. So there must have been a different pronunciation to this. But that empire came into be, and then this empire also ruled Egypt, Levant, and Hejaz or Hejaz. Again,
he's trying, guys.
But that place is the modern day Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Right. So, anyways, since then we go to the Ottoman Empire and take it away from there, Ashwal.
Interesting events that have led to the Ottoman Empire, and obviously the conflict that is ongoing, the reasons for the conflict, or these are like the stepping stones that have led to the conflict, and the major meat and bones of the the why the conflict is arising is going to, now I'm going to cover that. So the Ottoman Empire takes over around 1517 AD. So, and then it lasts, they ruled till the 1917 AD. So the Ottoman Empire ruled over much of West Asia. It was a big empire, and the region of Israel included. So they rule, and then by their rule, the majority of the population was Muslim or Islamic population, and then Christians were, I think, Christians and Jew people were minorities at that time.
Also, the thing is, Jewish people, they traveled all over the world. They did make the pilgrimage, and Christianity had found a home in Constantinople, right, and the Vatican and all this area. So it was it wasn't that it was a mass exodus or something. It was just people that were just moving in and about, because the overwhelming support for the Muslims that was there. They didn't feel safe in a way.
Exactly. It was just like the Muslims had established an area for themselves, somewhat like the Middle East or something. So, and then in the 19th century, the population of Israel / Palestine, let's just call it that, was almost 87% Muslim, 10% Christian, and 3% Jewish. So
sorry to cut you off, I'm so sorry again. But the thing is, there were attempts by the Jewish people as well and the Christian people as well to take over their holy land, right? Jerusalem. Multiple attempts during the Ottoman Empire rule, but they were all unsuccessful because the Ottoman Empire was that great of an empire back then, right?
They could not trample the Ottoman Empire. It lasted for a good 400 years.
Yeah, man.
And
so that's why in the 19th century we see that the percentage of Islamic
the percent of Islamic people were way high, and then but then from all accounts the communities lived in peace with each other at that time. In the city of Jerusalem, the population was fairly equal of the three religions. So in the 19th century, an Austro-Hungarian Jewish journalist, Theodor Herzl, again, I don't know how to pronounce that, propagated the idea of a Jewish homeland in Palestine for the Jews. And this idea came to be known as Zionism. So, which which found many followers of Jews all over Europe. It connected with those people, and then just because they were being discriminated at the time in Europe, and they were running away from all these discrimination and the hate against them. So they felt to connect with this ideology, and then this started catching it was
traction,
like it was catching traction. And then
the hate for Jewish people had somewhat, and we've talked about this before, right? Like it kind of gets left out of context, but there was an overwhelming sort of unease about the Jewish people in Europe and Central Asia.
Throughout various times of history. You just refer to it, a Shakespearean play, Merchant of Venice, right? Where Shylock, there's this Jew Shylock who is the antagonist of the story, and then he's just shown as a very cruel businessman.
Even willing to take a pound of flesh
for as a loan payment. So we can see some signs of that throughout history, but who knows. So all right, by then now the British government comes into play, and they play a huge role in this conflict till date. So in 1917 the British government announced the Balfour Declaration. Now this Balfour Declaration is a significant event that occurred in this history of Israel and Palestine. Also, it is also the reason why this conflict is ongoing today. One of the major reasons why this conflict is ongoing today. So the British announced the Balfour Declaration, hoping to gain the Jewish support for the World War I, which promised the establishment of, in Palestine, a national home for the Jewish people. So just basically establishment of a different state that recognizes Jewish or Judaism, right? And the Balfour Declaration was a public statement issued by the British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour in the November 2nd, 1917, in the form of a letter written to Lionel Walter Rothschild. I think most of the people have heard about the Rothschild family, a big business family, and then they are Jewish. They were, or maybe are Jewish still. So it expressed British support for the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine. And this was problematic because in 1916, now British had signed another secret of a deal with the French.
Main crux, right?
Yes. Because now this is a sign. Okay, they've signed a deal with Palestine, but they've also, a year before this deal, they signed a deal with France, saying that we will divide these Arab states and we'll control British, as we will control Palestine. So okay, that's it. All right, 2 deals. You think it's over? No. The third deal that British signed was, which back in 1915, was that it was a deal made with the ruler of Mecca, Sharif Hussein. In 1915, now it's said that Hussein would get to rule over this land of Israel if he would
coup.
A coup. So basically, if he would help a revolt against, an Arab-led revolt against the Ottomans. So British wanting to trample the Ottoman Empire, asking the help of Sharif, and sign the third deal. So 3 parties included.
And this was the first deal of them all.
Yes, this was the first deal of them all.
Right?
And in fact, he did help to trample the Ottoman Empire. And so British made 3 different deals with 3 different parties. And obviously there was some, heat.
Friction.
So like that was...
basically the thing, and we've tried to kind of understand this in a certain way, right? Like we are like, okay, so why is the British doing this? And then we've already mentioned Rothschild was a Jewish person, right? And during World War I, British were starting to get low on resources. They were starting to struggle, keeping all their empires alive and like all the resources intact, right? So America was helping them. And even in America, back then in the parliament, there were a lot of Jewish members who had sympathetic view towards the Jewish people, not only in and around their community, but also the Zionist, they were somewhat pro-Zionism, right? So that lended to it. So I think, I don't know, it just felt like British mingled too badly, made so many different deals because they were ruling the world. And
I think it all boils down to the divide and conquer tactic of British that they applied almost over the world, everywhere, And so basically, after making those 3 deals and not keeping up with any single one of them, the conflict was inevitable.
They just upped and left.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So after this, the conflicts and the signings that have happened, the deals that have been made, the massive influx of Jews had begun at this point.
So because in 1917 it was just 6%.
Yeah.
In the Israel-Palestine area, the Jewish population.
Yes.
Right.
About 6 to 7% of population at that time. But then you go back to 1920s and 1930s, Jewish population in Palestine increased by hundreds of thousands, facilitated by the British, saying that they were honoring the Balfour Declaration.
And Balfour is done after in 17. So what about the 1915s promises?
Yes.
Yeah,
and then during this time, the tensions were growing between Jewish and Arab communities. So even though if it looked like, okay, finally the British is, working their promise for the Jewish people, but then the Arabs had felt completely isolated. Okay, the Jewish are coming in. Okay, now we're going to get our home. But then from the Arab point of view, none of our word has been kept.
Yeah.
So that was their point of view. So the tensions were rising. And during the course of World War II, many Jews escaping the Europe, obviously for the Holocaust and all that, were brought to Palestine illegally because, the British had sort of put an immigration limit because the huge influx was causing some kind of backlash from the Arabs, right? So they put an immigration limit, but no matter the limit, the Jewish were still finding, the Jew people were still finding their way.
Anti-Jew sentiment had taken a hold in Europe, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they were still finding their way to their Holy Land because, organized by these Jewish organizations illegally. So tensions escalated and the British just left. They just left, and then they handed this problem to the United Nations. United Nations tried to do something, I would say. All right, in the 1947, they voted, and then they decided to do a partition where they separated the Palestinian and the Jewish states, dividing them. But then it was not equally divided. The Jewish were heavily favored, I would say, and then the Arabs did not accept this. So then formation of Israel happens, the formation of the State of Israel. Israel did gain independence in May 1948. The first prime minister was David Ben-Gurion. But then after that, the Arabs could not take it anymore. The Palestinians started a war. So following this declaration of independence, in 1948, the Arab-Israeli war broke out. So it was the 5 Arab states, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt, invading Israel. So a year later, a ceasefire. This went on for about a year.
They're severely under-resourced, right? In terms of weapons and ammunitions.
Yeah.
Because the Israelis were shown support by some of the Western powers. So
the most powerful Western powers.
Yeah.
So a ceasefire was announced in 1949 as part of the agreement. So the part of the agreement was that West Bank will be given to Jordan. The Gaza Strip will be given to Egypt. Israel, having won the war, though, they lost these lands, but they did lose these lands. But then now they controlled more than what the UN had given them. So Israel basically won the war, and then East Jerusalem was under control of Jordan. Okay, so they had lost these, I think, 3 chunks of lands, but then the major population of Israel had completely been overtaken by the Jews.
Jewish community.
Yes, and over 700,000 Palestinians were displaced and became refugees in the neighboring countries. 700,000 people from Palestine were displaced because of this war, and the Palestinians call this the Nakba. All right, this is a catastrophe for them, and then
major exodus. And 78% of land lost.
Yes.
Right?
Now, if you just, I think we will put this up, but then you just look at the influx of Jews throughout the years. In 1917, it was just a small chunk. 20s, it grew. And by 40s, it grew exponentially. So, this went on for the year. And I would just like to drop in some major bullet points now, the further wars. Talking about wars, there's got to be bullets, right?
Yeah.
So for the wars in 1967, now this is a prominent day, this is a prominent year, because the 6-day war started in Israel, and then Israel, basically the land that they had lost in 1948, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the East Jerusalem, they had gained it back. So the 6-day war, they won this one outright, and they had taken back control Gaza Strip, West Bank, Golan Heights from Syria, and the Sinai Peninsula as well. So Israel captured East Jerusalem also. They had gained back everything that they had lost and some more.
And expelled 300,000 more Palestinians from their homes.
Yes, the displacement just continued.
Go on.
The Yom Kippur War, obviously, sorry for if the pronunciation is bad, broke out in 1973. Exactly 50 years, right? So exactly 50 years ago, when Syria and Egypt launched airstrikes on Israel, the fighting stopped just under 2 weeks by a UN resolution. And then in 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon and ejected the PLO, being Palestinian Liberation Organization. Now this is, so PLO was formed in 1964 for the liberation of Palestinians, with an armed struggle. So they were they wanted to help, but then in violent way. So meanwhile, Israel was creating Jewish settlements in areas that were considered Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. And then, now this is a word that I came across, was kind of confusing to me, but then I think I could grasp the concept. The first Palestinian Intifada. So Intifada basically means, in Arabian terms, shaking off.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically a huge displacement, right? Or sort of.
So huge displacement.
Yeah, basically a huge displacement, or maybe just an earthquake or some sort. Just a massacre or a tragedy, let's just put it like that. So that is what basically it means. In 1987 there was an uprising of Palestinians against the Israeli occupation of Gaza. So they were slowly resenting, and revolution sort of on the brink here in the West Bank and all that. So hundreds of people were killed, and this was the first Palestinian Intifada, called the Arabic, meaning obviously shaking off. And then basically the Israeli government or the armed forces had gone outright and killed a lot of Palestinians because of this revolt that they had done. And this was what the Intifada was. The Intifada came to an end with the Oslo Peace Accords, signed in 1993 and 1995 again, and between then Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin or Yasser Arafat, the leader of PLO. Yes, that was the exact pronunciation, by the way. So this Oslo Peace Accords does play a huge role in this, because it would have, the ongoing impact of these Palestinian killings would have been very significant, and it would have been very sad, by the way.
Basically, the Palestinians were ready for a lose-lose situation where even if they lose, they were willing to make the other team pay even if they win.
Yes.
Right? So they were up for a lose-lose situation. And I think the accord kind of helped, because they were able to divide West Bank into 3 parts.
Yeah.
Right? And go on. ABC.
Yeah. And you're talking about that mentality, lose-lose mentality. I think that is exactly what the mentality of Hamas right now is. I think they are sort of a suicidal organization, terrorist organization, which will commit to the mission if they set out to, no matter the cost.
Yeah, and it's understandable to a certain degree, because this almost feels like disrespect on all fronts, especially 1917 onwards.
Yes.
So
just a massive discrimination on these people, basically innocent civilians, And having done all that, the current situation, these are the events that obviously transpired to what the conflict has been, up to now. But the current situation is that the Hamas, the terrorist organization, which we have talked about in our previous video, by the way, Hamas rules over Gaza. The Gaza borders are tightly controlled by Israel and Egypt. The West Bank is still occupied by Israel, and most Palestinian refugees and the descendants of the Nakba, they reside in Gaza, West Bank, East Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, and others, neighboring countries and such. So I would say this is pretty much it. From a different perspective, it just looks like these Palestinian. For me, I just kind of have sympathies with the Palestinians, and then But then I do not condone war, obviously, but it just looks that way to me.
Yeah, it does feel like they got the short end of the stick. And there were also some minor things that happened 2006, 14, 17 and onwards. But then now we are already at the point of I don't feel like there's no return here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. But anyways, this is pretty much it on the history front. Anything else you want to add?
It was complicated, wasn't it?
Yeah.
While doing the research, with all the timelines and all that, it was sort of interesting. But then basically what we learned was unfortunately, it turned out to be a hotbed for 3 different world-changing religions. And that was basically the starting point of this whole conflict.
And bear in mind, we have tried to not be very biased on either front.
Yes.
Just reporting on the claims of what we have as in terms of historical accuracies available on the internet, right? So if there are some mistakes or some points that we have missed, please feel free to inform us and also let us know more. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts on this? And yeah, pretty much that's it on.
And yeah, also that I think this will be my last episode.
Oh yeah. By the way, so this is the Ashwal. We have talked about this before. I don't know if the people remember, but Ashwal is going to Canada to continue his further education, and he's going to do. Tell us more. Which university? What?
So I've decided to go to Canada, Vancouver. All right, the University Canada West, for my bachelor course for 4 years, and then the course is Bachelor of Arts in Business Communications. So basically, a business course with some interesting twist and all that. And I'm really excited to go.
Yeah.
I've been kind of stuck here. All right, obviously it's fun in here, but then obviously trying to get out and experience that life.
Yeah. And though the fans of Ashwal might be heartbroken, but we will try to constantly incorporate him in some of the other episodes wherever we can, whether it be through Zoom calls or whenever he's on vacation and he's visiting. Maybe we'll try to do different things with that, fun things. But anyways, all the best for your future.
Yeah.
Hope you really enjoy your study time in Canada. This is the formative years, so it's going to be fun. You're going to get all these different learning experiences, some of them very good, some of them very bad. So yeah, be open to it, and I hope you'll have a great time.
Yeah, all right.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one. Me, of course, Ashwal won't be there, but see you soon. Peace.